What's good, YouTube? Ryan Record here with Scrubs Unite. Figured I'd go ahead and do a Raven Mad substitute this week because with my regionals coming up, I figured, I kind of wanted to just go ahead and get this put out there that there are some cards that the meta ignores, but some of them are just really good. Really good ones that can disrupt players, can actually cancel out entire strategies, and can actually do really good for techs. Simo actually referenced What Kinetic Puppeteer in a previous video quite a while back, but I kind of wanted to bring that up because What Kinetic Puppeteer is finally in a format where it could be viewed as useful. So for those of you who don't remember, or for those of you who never watched that video, What Kinetic Puppeteer is a level 4 Psychic, light attribute, 1800 attack. Quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and target one monster your opponent controls. Move that target to another of their main monster zones. So, pretty much, you can pick even their monster in their extra monster zone, and you can move it to somewhere else on the field. This is extremely helpful for cards like the Nightmares. You could easily hit something along the lines of Mermaid, pull it down to where they couldn't use kind of like the extra link, and you actually have an extra monster zone to work with. You could use it to move like Cerberus. I think it's Cerberus or Griffin. I know Griffin for a fact really doesn't need to be moved anywhere because it doesn't matter. But Phoenix and Cerberus, you can move them to the opposite ends of the field, and you can cut off their link arrows completely. Like, that completely just puts like a massive chink in their armor, and that's something that can really just let you have the opportunity to play the game. So, if they end up playing something along the lines of Nightmare, Unicorn, the one that lets you draw a ton, you can actually break that extra link by moving Unicorn to the far left or far right zone, and that'll break the extra link. So, while it wouldn't really do anything in particular, it would take something along the lines of what's on the opposite side of the field, and that would no longer be linked. So you could move, like, Unicorn over to the far, I think it's left side where Griffin is. And not Griffin, but Phoenix, next to Phoenix on the other side. And now the one to the right of where Cerberus was is now prone to, I think it's battle destruction, because I think it's Cerberus. You can hit something along the lines of monsters that they need out of the extra monster zones or even the link zones, and you could actually rob them of their extra monster zones for their pendulum summons as well. So say you're up against like Pendulum Magician or something like that, and you've got What Kinetic Puppeteer in your hand, you can pitch What Kinetic Puppeteer, target Electromite, and drag him down to one of the main monster zones, and that robs Pendulum Magicians of 2 of the extra monster zone summons slots to be able to summon from their extra deck. ABC can also be hit like this in certain ways, because they run the Nightmares too, obviously, and you could also, even if it's in a late game situation, which I know with Nightmares you usually don't get to a late game, but you could actually use it for like, you can go Nightmares, hit them, move them around. You can go Decode Talker, move him around. Pretty much any generic link 2 with a down pointing arrow, you can hit it, and it prevents that card from effectively being used. Akashic Magician, it really wouldn't do anything to hit Akashic Magician. Firewall does pretty much nothing to hit Firewall. Borreload can't be targeted. Saryuja, if you hit Saryuja Skull Dread against something like an ABC player, a Pendulum Magician player, a Spiral player, you can drag that down and put it in like the center zone, and now there's nothing stopping you. There's nothing making that Saryuja alive aside from maybe its extra special summon effect and being able to fix the hands. Something like Spiral, you can hit double Helix. They naturally summon it in the right extra monster zone. If you was to use What Connect Puppeteer and drag that from the extra monster zone down to the bottom left monster zone, that pretty much just cancels Double Helix's arrows entirely, and it makes it to where Double Helix's effects can't go off to get them extra monsters on the field. So, another one I wanted to bring up was a counter trap. It's actually common out of Extreme Force. So, it's called Parthian Shot. It's spell speed 3, and at the end of the battle phase, it becomes the end phase of this turn. So, essentially, this is used if you're playing like a go first build, and you feel like your opponent's sided in evenly matched. If you feel like you're playing against an evenly matched, you can play this in your sideboard and just side it in. This has no specific activation requirements for when it gets played. It's just a matter of it changes the phase to automatically the end phase. There's no active timing requirements, kind of like Threatening Roar. So you can activate this, and they are completely robbed of their activation of evenly matched. And that gives you essentially a free turn, because they'll go into their battle phase with nothing on their field, activate Parthian Shot. They have to end their battle phase. They don't get a main phase 2. They don't get an end of battle phase opportunity, because it automatically skips the end of the battle phase and makes it go into the end phase. So this robs evenly matched of its plays, and it essentially gives you a 100% free turn. And if you're playing something that's an OTK-centric deck like Spiral, ABC Nightmare, or even Pendulum Magicians with the FDK, and you were just waiting for one extra card or one extra chance to play it, Parthian Shot gives you the edge to be able to dodge the evenly matched and possibly get to that card for your strategy. Another thing I wanted to bring up about this card is a lot of end of battle phase effects, which I know there's not a whole lot in this game currently. I know the metagame doesn't actually use very many aside from evenly matched. But the concept of like end of battle phase effects, or the idea of setting up in their main phase 2, you can use this to cancel something like that out, and you won't really have to worry about playing against it because your opponent doesn't even get the chance to get it out of their hand, which is an absolute godsend for stuff that you can actually do in this game, because if you hold this until the right timing, then your opponent really can't struggle against it, because by the time you get to that proper timing to use it, they have no opportunity to play any cards to offset it. If they're going for an evenly matched play, they're not going to play anything on their field main phase 1. They're going to save it for their main phase 2, so that way they can go off and then kill you next turn. Parthian Shot cancels that opportunity out, because now they don't even have a chance to establish a board. So I've been looking into this, and I tested it. Granted, I know people don't count locals for much, but I've been testing it at my locals, and I'm really satisfied with it. Because the last time I used this at locals, it was against a 60-card variant. It was, I think it was the Dino Shadal variant, actually. And I activated this in Game 2, and he just said, pass turn. Because they have no opportunities to do otherwise. Even Fairy Tale Snow can't activate in response to this, and the most field they'll be able to establish in their end phase would be something like Fairy Tale Snow and Giant Rex. But I would rather stare down a Fairy Tale Snow and a Giant Rex than stare down something like an Omega Minerva Giant Rex Ultimate Conductor. You know, I would rather stare down something small. I'd rather stare down something to that category than to have to stare down something that's far more aggressive and difficult to deal with. Now, people will say, well, it's a trap, it's slow. You know, your opponent's going to go first, so that way they can try to set up a board, and if you break it, they'll drop evenly matched. which is a good argument for it. But if your opponent gets to pick who goes first, then that means you've already won game 1. And then when you lose game 2, you have the option to go first going into game 3 and just 2-1 your opponent, and that's just how you move on to the next round. So those are some possibilities I wanted to include in this possible deck option. I don't know if I'll make this a regular for what I would, I don't know if I'd make this a regular video anymore, but I wouldn't mind seeing like feedback for people and seeing what people think would be a good tech. If you have anything that you'd like to make a video of that's, budget or, a nice tech or, maybe something table 500 that might have some, like, competitive capability and that's just commonly overlooked, comment it below and we'll take a look at it and we might be able to make a video of it in the future. So until then, we'll see you next time. YouTube signing off.